Good question.
I guess this is the part where I actually start to breathe. I have a question for Charisma.
Yes.
On Buffy, how do you feel about the transition from being cocky, arrogant, and I rule the world, to like this goddess, badass, dark-powered woman?
I felt great about it. Good answer. I'm sorry, did you want me to... Was that not the response you were looking for?
I'm gonna have a heart attack standing here. I think it's good.
It's a moment. Aw. Sweet.
You look like Spike. And you look like Willow.
She's playing Penny tonight at 11:30 at the Dr. Horrible. And there's Captain Hammer right
And
there.
there's Captain Hammer.
There's Dr. Horrible. A woman at Dr. Horrible.
That's right.
That sounds cool. She's got double duty as a redhead.
Question.
Mostly for Felicia and Charisma, out of the things you've done with Joss, what was your favorite character? And then Charisma, which did you prefer being on set of Buffy or Angel? Which you had more fun on?
I mean, I had a great time doing Dr. Horrible. It was just so much fun. It was kind of more my style. I'm always intimidated when I'm working with fancy people. So Dr. Horrible was like kind of a mid-step between like, you know, a professional set and then, you know, shooting in my garage. And it was such a fun set because everybody really, there was nobody to please except for, you know, the Joss and the writers. Like, it was playtime. There was no network telling him what to do or like script approval or anything, and everybody was just like, let's get together and make a show. And even though it was a crazy shoot, we didn't do more than like 1 or 2 takes ever, and like some of it, like the sun went down and we had to reshoot like a whole scene somewhere else, and there were a lot of technical challenges because the budget was so low. It was just a lot more it was just really collaborative, and people had a good time, so I would say that was my favorite.
Cordelia, obviously, on Angel was much more fulfilling, just because there was more me. Wow. That didn't come across right. But what I loved is just that, one thing I did miss was Greenie really had a knack for writing for her on Buffy. She was so fun being shallow, and then when she had her visions. I think everything kind of changed on episode 9, Hero, when they wrote off Glenn Quinn, and I got the powers through his kiss, and I think everything kind of changed for her in that regard. And I think that much like life, you know, most of Joss's writing is metaphoric, and I think much like life, when you go through pain, you do your biggest growing. And I think that was a literal example of truly what happens in life. So that was a great experience to have, to explore her. But I hope through it all, the sassiness remained enough, you know? That's it.
Okay. This question, I know you're getting a lot of questions in a row, Charisma, but I have another one for you. I actually watched all of Buffy and loved Willow and thought Willow was my favorite character until I rewatched Buffy and Angel together. And then I realized that Cordelia was my favorite character. I think that there was 2 reasons for that. I think one of them was that Cordelia had a wit that nobody else could quite capture. I really felt like in the 5th season of Angel, when they decided to do what they did with Cordelia, the energy changed, and it didn't change in a positive way. I'm just curious. Well, yeah. I mean, I applaud what they did in bringing Spike over and trying to use Spike as, like, you know, the supplemental Cordelia, but you know. I'm curious, like, I know that a lot of times Joss will collaborate with the actors as far as when he's building a story arc and when he's building the characters, he will, from what I've heard anyway, he will come to the actors or actresses and say, hey, what do you think of this, okay, and so on and so forth. I'm curious what you felt about what happened with Cordelia's character, as far as from the beginning of Buffy, and then transitioning into Angel, and then I just felt like the way that Cordelia was cut out was kind of really just weak. It was just weak. I'm sorry. I'm just curious, like, how did you feel about it as an actor and as Cordelia?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, I mean, how did I feel about the transition? Obviously, I loved the transition. It was a great experience to have her go the distance and so on and so forth. And I think what happened, you know, my relationship with Joss became strained when, particularly, I mean, you know, we all go through our stuff in general on the back side of things. And I was going through my stuff, and then I became pregnant. And, you know, I guess in his mind, he had a different way of seeing the season go. And in the 4th season, it was my least favorite season, actually. I did not understand the relationship with Connor. I think he's a fine actor.
I didn't approve of it.
Weird. I think Joss was really, honestly, mad. He was really mad at me, and, you know, and I say that in a, you know, in a loving way, which is, you know, it's a very complicated dynamic, you know, working for somebody for so many years and expectations, and then also, as you've been on a show for 8 years, you gotta live your life. And sometimes living your life gets in the way of what maybe the creator's vision is for the future, and in that becomes conflict. And that was my experience. So, without getting into details and stuff, you know, I have I think we put that stuff aside, and we're in a better space. I mean, I would definitely work with him again, and I remember going to the new box set was coming out, so we did the commentaries for that, which I thought was, anyway, at that meeting, you know, Joss and I had a moment to ourselves where we, you know, I just said, you know, he had talked about, I think, doing like the Dr. Horrible stuff, and I wasn't sure, but I thought that he had a plan, a master plan, in keeping the studio out of stuff, so he would have more creative control, and therefore, because when he does have creative control, obviously he goes the distance with it. I think in that, he wanted to get away from being told what to do in terms of creation, and I thought that I would be a part of those things that he was in. Maybe in the future I would be. But it was a great moment for us to have a dialogue about, would you really work with me again? And he's like, well, would you work with me? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, yeah. So I felt better about it, but at the time it was a very strained experience, and when I found out I was going to die, I mean, I agreed to do, I didn't know that I wasn't going to be in the 5th season, to be honest with you, in my fans. I did not know, and I found out in a really horrible way. And then I found out James was going to be on Angel, which makes sense. And then I never got a phone call from anybody. I actually got a phone call from somebody in the press, which really sucked. And when that happened, they came to me for the 100th episode, and I said, well, I don't want to go back, because the way that it all went down, I don't feel good about it. But I also knew that you needed closure as the fans of the show. And I was just very concerned that I said, well, I'll go back, but I don't want to die. I'm not going to go back to die. Just not going to do it. So leave it open-ended or whatever. And finally, that happened. I signed the dotted line. We agreed on all the other terms. I signed the dotted line, and then I found out they were going to kill me. And I started crying. And I had this conversation, you know, with Jeffrey Bell in my trailer. I was actually working on Mismatched at the time, and that was on the lot where the producers stayed at Buffy World or Whedon World. And he said to me, listen, I have this really difficult thing I need to tell you, and I know that we talked about this and you weren't gonna die, but you're gonna die. And I started bawling, like, I knew you guys would do this to me. I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. Why did I agree to do this? And I was really upset. I felt totally betrayed. I said, well, let me hear the story. And he said, it's special. And I said, well, let me hear it. And when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's good. Jaws is good. And, you know, that's the story. That's the story behind that. And it sucked that I died, but I really felt it was a hell of a way to go.
Yeah.